interview with Levi Jackson. Levi is a rancher here in southern Saskatchewan, and he is here today to tell us, or answer, I guess, any and all questions that you may have about raising cattle and livestock. Before I turn it over to Levi to let him introduce himself, I would like to remind you to keep your microphones muted, and any questions that you have, you can just ask them in the chat function of the call. All right, Levi, take it away.
So we run Jackson Cattle Company, and we are strictly a cow-calf operation. We run commercial cattle as well as a number of purebred cows and all Angus cattle. Now on our commercial side, we do also use some Simmental bulls, and we go back and forth. The Simmental bulls add some more growth, a little more frame and scale and size, but the Angus base cow is what we really like to keep our moderation as far as frame size and easy keep and mobility. So we are basically grass farmers because we have to survive on our forages, meaning our grass. Everything that our cattle consume in the summer is green grass on pasture, and basically the biggest part of their feed source for the winter is also hay of one sort or another. We also substitute some oats and barley into green feed or a silage bale mixture, and that also becomes part of what we do to get our cattle through the winter. But that's what we make our living out of. We look after our cattle very, very well. They're everything to us. That's what we make our living from, and we do a really good job in looking after them in the best possible case that we can. So, and that is my wife Carmen, myself, and our son Chance. It's just the three of us, and we run a couple of hundred cows throughout the summer, but in the winter we also feed a number of bulls for a fellow that has a bull sale at our place. So in the winter, we might feed up to 500 head of cattle. So we can keep pretty busy every day.
Levi, tell us what a week at Agribition looks like for you as an exhibitor.
Well, Agribition is the best show in Canada. And I'm a little biased because I'm also a director of Agribition, but I've been a volunteer at this show for 37 years as well. So Agribition is the premier livestock show, beef cattle show that we have in the country. And coming here, you get to compete with basically all of the best cattle throughout the country. There are cattle that will come from the Maritimes, Quebec, lots of Ontario cattle, certainly Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta, as well as some cattle that come out of British Columbia. So it is pretty much countrywide that comes here to Agribition to compete, and that's where we see just a tremendous set of cattle in every breed. And honestly, it doesn't matter what breed you're involved in, you'll find what you're looking for here at Agribition. It's a very busy week.
Tell us a little bit about a day in the life on a show day. What time does your day start at?
Well, if it's show day and not the days building up to it, depending on what time your show starts, if it's 8 o'clock in the morning, you might be here in the barns at 2 or 3 in the morning. And you'll bring the cattle in from the tie-outs, because we take them out at night and tie them out in straw. We bring them in the morning, and then they go to the wash rack. They get washed, soaked, rinsed again, and then they go back to the stall and are blown out with big, powerful blowers. And we blow their hair in a certain way to get the hair to lay exactly the way we'd like them to. Previous to that, they've all been clipped and combed and brushed, and the hair's all ready to go. So then, once they're all dry and they get fed and watered, they get a chance to lay down, and before very long, if the show is early in the morning, then we're getting the first ones up, and that would be the young heifer calves. The shows always start from youngest to oldest, and they always start females first and bulls after. So if you have some March, February heifer calves, you're starting pretty early again, getting them ready for the ring. And that involves working the hair leg, or the hair on their legs rather, and using some products that hold their hair where we want them. We make them look just fantastic, and put a show halter on them, so it's a leather halter rather than the rope halter that we handle them with every day. head to the show ring and go in there, and there'll be one judge, or a number of times there might be a husband and wife team that's judging. They go out there and decide in each and every class which ones they like the best, and they place them from first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and so on to the end of the class. And do that all day long till we're done.
So Levi, show cattle are used to getting shampooed and getting their hair dried and brushed and combed. What's the temperament? What's the attitude of a show cow like versus a regular cow in the yard?
Well, first of all, with purebred cattle, they are no different, basically, than commercial cattle. But the temperament, there is no difference. We don't breed a show animal. We breed our cattle, our purebred cattle, and from those cattle, we decide which ones we're going to show. So the temperament is already there. But what they learn, and it's such a connection that we end up getting with these cattle. What they learn is to trust us, that what we do to them is all good. There's nothing that's ever bad that comes from it. We lead all these cattle around through all the barns and outside and to tie-outs and to the show ring and all that by a rope halter. That's all that's on there, is just a rope halter on their head. And we control cows that could weigh 1,700-1,800 pounds. So their disposition is good. They trust us. They know that we're going to be good to them, and they handle just so well with us. So that alone should tell you just how good we look after the livestock that we own and we're in charge of, and that we look after each and every day.
Yeah, it's kind of like walking a big puppy around on a leash almost, isn't it?
Oh yeah. Now it does take a little time. Maybe one of those animals, when you're first starting to halter break them, it is a little anxious, moves a little faster, whatever, but with time, they slow down or they get more comfortable day after day with being handled like that. They accept it very, very well. And you know, honestly, we probably treat them better at the shows than sometimes we treat ourselves. We can get wore out and pretty tired and long hours, but we look after them first and last. That's the whole reason to be here. So we work really, really hard on them, and the trust that they have with us is really, really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, in the barns at Agribition, is it just one breed of cow that's in the show barns, or how many different breeds do we have kicking around here this week?
You know, I should know the number, but it's probably 11 or 12 different breeds. And so we'll have Angus, that'll be red and black, Hereford cattle, Charolais, Geltve, Maine Anjou, Simmental, Speckle Park, Limousine. What am I forgetting? I must be forgetting something. There's
many, right? It's all just like different breeds of...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so all of the different breeds, the breeders from those different breeds, we all collectively come to Agribition. Like I said, it's the premier livestock show in Canada, and that's where people bring them. You know, it's the final show as well through the show circuit, and that's where people bring them.
Yeah.
So,
all right. We have a question here. What is the average age of a female cow when she's able to have her first calf?
So when a heifer calf is born, when calves are born, and whether it's January, February, March, April, whatever, generally we wean them off their mother when they're 7 months old, let's say. And so that will vary when they come off their mother in the fall, depending on when they were born. We then, all of our replacement heifers, the ones that we've decided to keep to turn into our cow herd, we keep them over as calves till they're yearlings, and generally we breed those heifer calves to calve when they're close to 2 years old. That's kind of the aim. That can fluctuate from 21 months to 25 months, something like that, but that's generally when they have their first calf, is when they're 2 years old, and then the process repeats itself. That calf will get weaned off when they're 6, 7 months old and starts all over again. So yes, generally the first calves are born on those females when the female's 2 years old.
Perfect. Okay, now going into
Sure.
And a cow, I guess?
The difference between a heifer, steer, bull, cow, all of them collectively are called cattle. Heifers are young females. So it would be like there's a girl when she's younger, and when she's a little older, she's a woman or a lady. So a heifer calf is a younger one, and even when they get to where they're 2 years old, we might still call them a 2-year-old heifer. Once they reach that part, we start calling them a cow. They're more mature and they become a cow. Bulls are bulls from the time they're born, if they remain a bull, till they're older. And a steer are bull calves that are born, that are castrated in an extremely humane manner, and they become steers. And the reason we do that is when they're going to go into a feedlot and go into the food chain in that way, they don't need all the testosterone or all the look at me, I'm a bull, and pond dirt and all that. And steers are much easier to handle. Their disposition changes dramatically when they are castrated, much easier to handle and work with and all those things. So a steer is a castrated bull, a heifer is a young female, a cow is an older female.
Perfect. Okay. Now, just out of curiosity, is there a way that cattle producers identify their cattle? So what happens when a calf is born? Is there a way to identify?
So identifying cattle, our commercial cows generally calve in April out on the grass. My son has some purebred Angus cattle, and he starts calving them the middle part of February and on. So every purebred calf that is born, we weigh each and every one of those calves. We have a sling and a spring-loaded scale, and we weigh each of those calves to tell people exactly how much they weigh when they're born. That's information that is used later, but those calves receive 2 tags. One tag is what we call a dangle tag that you can see that comes out of their ear. And on that dangle tag, if the year that we're calving in is, and we use an alphabetical number, a letter rather, let's say it's J, this year is J or K or whatever, then the first calf born would be 1J, and then 2J and 3J and those kind of things. The other tag that goes into them, and it doesn't have to go in immediately, but it will go in at some time, is a radio frequency tag. And that is something that has been developed since BSE hit a number of years ago, that I can identify each and every animal just by taking an electronic wand and passing it over that tag, and a number will come up to identify what they are, to identify that particular animal. And every animal, every cattle species, when they go to town or go somewhere or go to the auction mart, they must have that RFID tag, that radio frequency identification tag in their ear. That's part of the process. When they're purebred cattle, we also put a tattoo in their ear. And that is a permanent identification that you can see and find forever. The other thing that some people do, as calves or yearlings, we might put a brand on them. My son actually brands all of his cattle now, but he doesn't do it with a hot iron, he does it with a cold iron, so it's called freeze branding. It's less invasive, they hardly feel it, and what it does is it just changes the hair color on those animals with that freeze brand and shows a different number, and so it's really easy to identify the cattle when they're out on the grass, out in pasture. If they happen to lose a tag and they're a commercial animal, they have that freeze brand on and we know exactly who they are. And again, it's done in a very, very good way for the animal.
Yeah, so the idea is when you're out and about, if your cows happen to get mixed in with a neighbor's pen, you can tell who's yours, and also once those cows go down the road, the government or whatever, they're able to trace back to where exactly that calf was born. So that's really important for traceability.
That's exactly right. It's an identification system that helps our food process right from start to finish. It tells us where they originated from. Sometimes it can even indicate where they might have been between birth and that time later in life as well.
Yeah, for sure.
So we do a lot of that.
So,
identification is a very big part of our process now.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So when we're talking cows, there's a difference between commercial cattle and purebred cattle or show cattle. Do they eat different things?
Well, when you're preparing something for the show, they're going to eat different feed. They're going to eat a little bit more, a little fancier feed to get them into shape, to get them fed up a little better, to make them look like they're ready to go into the show ring. But if they're not a show animal, and once they're done being at the show, no, they all eat the same sort of thing, whether it's alfalfa hay or a grass hay, whether some people have silage that's been chopped and put into a mix wagon, whether it's silage bales that goes into a bale feeder, or anything like that, even green feed. Green feed is an oat or barley crop that gets cut before it's fully mature, and we use that as a feed source as well. So, no, it doesn't matter whether they're purebred, commercial, or the show animal. Basically, when it's all said and done, they eat the same sort of thing. Yep.
Levi, do you want to touch on how cows are benefiting the environment, how cows are using quote-unquote unusable ground or unusable grass and land to really
Well, you know what? That's a great question, because we kind of get hammered a little bit the wrong way with a cow belching and putting emissions into the air. And yes, that does happen. But the thing that people need to realize is that cattle eat green grass in the summer. What they eat in the winter was green hay that was raised in the summer, as well as any oats or barley that was seeded and grown as well for feed. All of those plants, whether they're eating them in the summer now or in the winter later, all of those living plants are green. They capture carbon out of the air. That goes into the root system and becomes nitrogen, which is their own source of fertilizer that makes better root system, better soil, better ground. There are so many benefits that having our livestock out eating that manner, that it offsets any little bit of burping or belching that they do to emit something else. Quite honestly, when they talk about carbon capture and carbon credits, those kind of things, we should be way up the list on carbon credits, because that is our whole process. Everything we have is green, and I don't think we get enough credit for that, to be honest with you. So and you have to keep in mind, we have to do that as financially responsibly as possible. We don't throw a bunch of unneeded fertilizer into the ground and things that we don't need, because that's just too expensive for us to make a living. So we do it the absolute best way we can. Growing grass, one way or the other, is nothing but a good thing for the environment, because all of that plant captures carbon.
All right, Levi. We have a question here. Does the food that cows eat affect the way that their milk may taste later? And I'm assuming we're talking about dairy cows here.
Actually, yes. When you're talking about dairy cattle and what they do for milk production, it does matter. In the dairy industry, they check their feed sources regularly, and they develop a feed program in order to have that cow produce the most optimum liters of milk per day, and they are fed more and fed heavier, because that is the whole process with the dairy side of things, is to produce milk. And for us with beef cattle, we need our cows to milk really well, because that calf has to nurse that cow in order to grow. as our calves get a little older, they start eating grass as well, along with their mother. But it's still that milk source that grows that calf from start to weaning time. So all of those things are important. For us as beef producers, the quality of our grass, what is in our grass in terms of biodiversity, different species, all those things help with milk production. In the dairy barns, what they feed them each and every day is very, very calculated, right down to the pound, as well as every little bit of protein, energy, calcium, all of the nutrients and minerals that are needed for them to produce quality milk. So it gets pretty technical sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes it's almost like they have their own nutritionist coming in and telling them what is the best.
No, they do have their own nutritionist. Yes, they do. And even ourselves, we start taking feed samples from our different baled silage. We take a feed sample from different fields of hay, whether it's alfalfa or grass, and then we get a feed analysis that comes back to us, and we decide whether it's young cattle that will eat this particular feed source, older cattle will get along with that feed source, and if we need to supplement something because we're lacking a mineral or lacking a little bit of protein or energy, then we're able to kind of target those things and make a few changes in some of the things that we can supplement our cattle with.
Yeah, so I guess in all aspects when you're raising cows, in terms of what they eat, where they sleep, how they're being treated, we really want to make sure it's the best possible. It's top tier, right? Absolutely.
We do. We, like I said before, we make our living out of our livestock. We look after them very, very well. If we didn't do that, it would be very difficult for us to be able to do what we do, make and live in the way we do. With that, farming and ranching isn't very easy sometimes, but it's a great way to live. It's a tough way to make a living, but it's a great way to live. And what some of you just probably can't grasp unless you were into it yourself is we live and die by the weather. The weather is the one sole thing that can make us or absolutely break us. I like to say it this way: we can do everything right and still be wrong if the weather doesn't work with us and work for us. And when the days get really hot and everybody's liking it because you're at the lake or the beach and it's not raining, sometimes we're wishing it was cooler and it would rain because we need it. And so we live and die by the weather.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So farming and ranching and all isn't just rainbows and sunshines all the time. I don't think people have cows just to have cows. They really have to have cattle because they love it, right?
Yeah, you gotta like what we do because it's every day. Might not be all day every day, but it is every day. Especially in the wintertime. In the wintertime when lots of you are kind of inside and enjoying how nice and warm it is, playing a video game or watching TV or maybe going to the rink to play hockey, we can be outside in those storms and that bad weather because we're looking after our livestock. That's what we do. It's what we like. It's what we've done all of our life so far, and looks like my son's going to keep doing it too. So.
Awesome. Do you have any last words to send these kids off with, Levi?
All I can say to you is enjoy what you have. You know, we do everything we can to do the best job to provide a safe, healthy food source for you. And sometimes you young people might hear and read some things that sounds terrible and awful, and I would just tell you you don't believe everything you hear, because quite honestly, some of it is made up because some people are wanting to prove a point. It's what I've been telling you right now is just the way it absolutely is. We love what we do, and we do a good job at it. We look after our livestock very, very well.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time, Levi. And until next time, everybody, keep ranching.
All right. Thank you.